Great. We are good. Um, so Connie, you don't need to do much for now, but during the workshop, so I'm gonna
We
give a
are
quick
good.
intro. Uh, and then I'm gonna, as I let people in, I'll give a quick intro, we'll get started. I'm mostly gonna be I'll kind of be checking the chat, but I'll mostly just make sure the YouTube stuff works, make sure that the program goes well. If you see any particular questions or when people ask questions, if people ask questions in the chat, tell them we're not taking questions until the end. All right.
Okay.
Because we don't want people to just ask a question, then they ask another question, and suddenly this turns into 5 hours. We want to make sure we move through it all, and then we will take a small number of questions at the end. So Wilson can also get off and go eat. Also me, also you. Um, so we'll just keep it simple like that. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. I'm gonna start letting people in. Wilson, you can start sharing your screen.
Sounds good.
All right.
It's Scotty.
How's it going?
I get how are you?
Good. Just letting people in. Then wait a couple minutes, then get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell everyone. I know more people are gonna join. But the main thing is if they're late, it's okay. We're broadcasting this to YouTube Live, and then we will send out the link after so people can rewatch it. You can also share it with people, so it doesn't matter when you join. One important thing, we are not taking any questions until the end. I know for a lot of people, this sounds kind of counterintuitive because in class, you can say, "Hey, professor, I don't understand. Can you stop and explain something?" The difference is because this is going to be on YouTube Live and you're going to be able to rewatch it. We want to go ahead and make sure we get through this for everyone so then everyone can get going, everyone can get out, and then people who have questions can stay. All right. So we are not going to take questions until the end. No questions during the workshop. It's not because we're trying to be mean. We're just trying to make sure everyone can finish up and leave, do their next thing, and then you can rewatch the workshop anytime you want. You can pause and really look into code if you thought it was too fast. But the main thing is, we want to make sure everyone can get out when, on a pretty good schedule. So we'll wait another minute or so, and then we will have Wilson get started, and I'll give him an introduction before that. All right. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Like I said, anyone that misses anything, they can rewatch. Uh, we're going to send out the YouTube live link so people can rewatch it. And so we are not going to start over. We're not going to take questions until the end. We're just going to go straight through and then everyone can watch the video after. All right. So starting off, we have Wilson Munoz, who is from Cancun, Mexico. People actually do live there. He's born and raised in Cancun. We met in San Francisco at Make School. Basically, it was an iOS academy. He built a lot of apps and he worked as a software engineer. I guess he's been working as a software engineer since then. He is back in Cancun. He is based there now. I guess he's been based there most of the time, but basically he's back there now. So, he's enjoying some good sun, some good weather, good food. But he has very graciously taken time to build a workshop, convert it to Python, and take the time to set up and figure out how to teach this to everyone. What we want to do is say, here's a lot of stuff you might know in 101 and 201, basic computer science classes. But rather than learning stuff like int x equals 3, right? That's a theoretical variable. We want to focus on maybe instead it's int num seconds per minute equals 60. So you see how a lot of this classroom knowledge very directly translates to real world knowledge. And when you're able to build this app, you're going to be able to do a lot of other things. But the main thing is just showing you a lot of the basics that you can expand on. So, Wilson, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you doing all this. We can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, thank you, Scotty. Thank you for the time. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm from Cancun. I'm sorry it's getting a little bit late, but usually it's more sunny. But yeah, thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm just gonna I go straight to it. As Scotty mentioned, please, any doubts, any questions you guys have, just write them down, and I'll try to do my best to answer them. This workshop is intended just to explain you a few things, but it should give you at least some baseline to progress your ideas, any hackathon ideas, or whatever you guys have in your mind, personal projects or whatever. But let's start with what you guys gonna build, or at least what you are striving to build. Something more visual as an example, just to start, and then I can start with the code. So I got a few ones. So let me just see which one. I think it's this one. So let me just show you really quick what's the idea behind this small project. So this is usage Kinter. So we're gonna build stopwatch. We're gonna start with something very simple, variables, tuples, then with functions, scope, and all of that stuff. And then the idea here is just to understand how you start and then how you finish something like this, right? You can start having a stopwatch. So this is very simple again, but we're gonna go deep into some elements, or not super deep, but at least some basics. And then we can build something uh, more difficult. But as you guys know, we don't start with the whole chunk of code. We want to start with something smaller and then start building on top of it. So imagine this as a small story. You want to try to dissect. And for dissecting this project, we're going to start with a small story, with a narrative, and a scenario, right? So a user wants to track time. It's an utility, very simple. And what's a narrative? Sorry for my typos here. So if there is any typos, user has different needs for tracking time. We want to have a small app to organize better. The user want to track one task at a time. We don't want to have multiple tasks running, anything like that. Something very simple. Then we have the scenarios, right? What's the acceptance criteria? User should be able to start, stop, and reset. That's pretty much it. And when the user stops, and then starts again, the time resumes where it left. So that's pretty much it. We don't want anything else. Of course, once you guys go into production or something more, I want to say production ready or real scenarios in a company or something like that, a story will be more complex, right? You got acceptance criteria more in detail, and then you got some failing criteria. But for now, we're gonna start with something very simple in here. So that's the story. So how do we start doing this? How do we start building something and get to the acceptance criteria and finish the story? So I'm gonna minimize this and get to this project. So let's start with the basics. Let's start simple. Let's start from creating our project from the start. Oh, by the way, once we finish this, you're gonna be able to either fork or like copy or pull this code. I'll share the link in a bit, but first try to follow me or just pay attention what we'll be doing, make notes, and write down whatever you guys need. Once we finish, you'll be able to see all of the code all done and the commits by different parts. We're gonna start with the basic of computer science 101, like what's constants and all that. Once we get the basic out of the way, we move to the more complex stuff and the fun stuff with the UI and UX and classes. So yeah, let's start with something very simple. Let's go over to our desktop and create a new folder. Okay, and we're gonna call this stopwatch. Right? That's where we start. Because we know that we're gonna create this project with a Python. We can start creating our basic first file, right? So we got touch, and then we got our first file that is gonna be our app. So now we're gonna move this small file to our stopwatch. And we're gonna get to our stopwatch folder. See that we got our file there, and we're gonna start using Git for this. What's Git? I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you guys know that we use Git for tracking our different changes along the time. So we don't have my mistake like here. For example, I do have like 2 folders, workshop final, workshop review. You don't want this, right? I do it this way because I tried different ways of making this workshop. So ignore this. But the idea is to have just one project that we can manage and go back. So we have different times here. So I started this on last week and I can go back to different times where I want to see the code. I'll show this in a bit with a program, but I'm going a little bit ahead of time. So how do we start with Git? Just Git init. You have an empty Git ready to go. And you won't see anything if you just start like this, but if you want to see that there's something there, you're gonna see that there's like a hidden folder over there with Git. So we're ready to go, but we haven't committed anything. So we need to start committing, and to commit, we just do git add. And we wanna add everything. And right now everything is just our app file, right? So just everything right now and then commit. And with this is the classic initial commit. Right? There you go. So right now, if you check your log, you're gonna see that you have initial commit. So you started building your project already. You don't have anything. You don't have anything, just like me in this one, right? I don't have anything. Just start my commit. I'm gonna start making my project. Okay. So we're ready to start building our app. Now we can go to the code because we have a way to go back if we make mistakes with Git. And then we can use GitHub, for example. There are other companies out there you guys can use like Bitbucket or I think GitLab, for example. But for now, we're gonna stick with GitHub. Okay, so now we're gonna start coding. Okay. Now we're gonna, you guys allow me 1 sec. I'm gonna start pulling this small app here that allows me to go through time. So we start with the workshop here, and then I start pulling changes. So it's gonna copy all of this 1 sec, and I start explaining what I mean with this. Sorry, I think I went to the wrong file. 1 sec. 1 sec, please. Here we go. Okay. Okay, just in case you guys wanna like run some of the code that we're gonna be doing here, there is like a small playground called onlinepython.com that you don't need to install on your machine Python. You can just open this link and start like building on top of it. Why do we use Python? Well, Python is very famous, it's very versatile, it's very strong. We can do a lot of stuff with it. We can also choose something simple, like, for example, JavaScript, or Swift, for example. Scott and I really enjoyed doing some stuff with Swift years ago, but there's a small element that we kind of like about Python. And Swift, for example, you do need to state variables with what they are. For example, in Swift, we have something like a number, right? And then we need to define it as an integer. Something similar happens with TypeScript, if you guys are familiar with TypeScript. But in this case, we don't need to do that with Python. You can start something like, for example, time in a minute, or seconds, sorry, seconds in a minute. And you can start declaring something very simple. You don't have to say, hey, this is an integer, or this is like a double, anything like that. You're just establishing something very simple with Python, really right to the point. So that's something that is very powerful with Python, very simple. So, but if you guys are like curious about how we manage constants and how weakly and strongly type languages, I invite you to guys explore a little bit of Swift, which is really fun and really versatile to do with iOS apps. For example, if you guys like to do iOS apps, that's a language that it's really fun to learn. Okay, so now that we have that, we can start establishing some elements. For example, we have the concept of variables and constants. What's a variable and constants? So a variable is something we can vary through time. So maybe here we got 60, and then later in our program, we want to change this variable to something different. Unfortunately, in Python, we don't have something like constant, like per se, like in Swift. In Swift, you have something called a constant when you call it let. If you say something like, for example, 1 minute in seconds, and you declare it as 60, if you want to do something with it later, this will be an error, right? Because this is something that is a constant and not a variable. But we don't have anything like that here in Python. I'm just mentioning it because it's really interesting to understand these kind of like differences in languages. So just keep it in mind when you're choosing a language for a project. Either you go with JavaScript. Again, there's like a lot of different projects. You can do React, you can use Next.js, whatever you guys feel more comfortable or want to build on top. If you guys choose Python, is because you got the right reasons. And one right reason is that you understand what you're doing. And sometimes what you're doing is very simple as, okay, I just want to go straight to the point, and I just want to start declaring some variables here. I don't care if it's right now, if it's a constant or a variable. I just want to start building something. And Python is really fast to do that. So that's why we have a few choices, a few reasons, sorry, to choose Python. So then in here, you don't need to declare that it's a string. So we already declare that it's a string. Okay? Okay, we're gonna start like getting something on the terminal just to like work through it, understanding what's up with this. So once we got our first part of the code, we know that there is some changes. Actually, you start checking, like for example, we get, hey, what's going on? Hey, it seems that you got some changes on app, so you're ready to start committing, right? But for now, we're just gonna like start running. So as you can see, once we start running with Python, and again, if you wanna put this or start playing with this kind of like code with this URL, please do. You're gonna start like getting some results. Feel free to do it. And as you can see, the first things that we get is the 60 that we declare here, and the seconds, which is the label we're gonna use on the stopwatch. Okay, so there we go. We start getting some results, some information on what's each of these. One is an integer and the other one is in a string. As you can see, it's a class. Class will come a little bit later, but I'm pretty sure you guys maybe are a little bit aware of what's going on in there. Okay, let's keep moving forward. In the case of Python, we got kind of like this way of dealing with constant, even though we don't have constant. Again, I can change this later. I can go here and declare that now it's 40. There is no like build error, no error here, right? We don't have an error with this, but it's a convention on Python that when we have like uppercase, something like this, it's stated like, oh, this is a constant. Just in case you guys want to like follow practices, remember that using like uppercase is one way of doing it in Python. Okay, and as you can see, there is nothing different with this. Like if you want to like, again, just print whatever is in the project, we just get the same result as we were just doing right here. So just gonna go really more quickly with this code. I just want to like start getting something here. Let's move to functions. You guys are very familiar with functions, I'm pretty sure, right? So what we're gonna do here is just try to like combine variables here. And what's a function? Well, imagine that you can encapsulate this code instead of like having all of this mess. We want to start encapsulating and chunking or coding different logics. So we're gonna start making these functions and understanding what's the scope. So we want to make this function called sum, which is the idea here is to just want to document here. So we can set like addition of two integers, right? But we don't have a way to declare that this is an integer and this one is an integer. So what happens if by any chance, for example, we pass our 1 minute and seconds and our second label here? I'm not sure what's up. What happens there? We start getting some errors because we don't have a way to declare, hey, hey, this is like a integer and this is supposed to be an integer too. So just be careful with that one. Once you start like combining types of variables and they're not compatible, we can start getting some problems there. So in the case when we like combine these two, which are integers, you shouldn't get any problems. Oh, well, you do have a problem in my case. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, so 1 minute and the seconds. Oh, my bad. I think I have. Okay. There we go. My bad there. Okay. As you can see, once we start like adding the two integers, we don't get any errors. But once you're gonna, if you by any chance start like combining a label, or in this case, no label, sorry, in a string with an integer, you will get errors. So just be careful with that one. Just remember what's happening when you are like using a function and you paste in variables. So if, for example, I decide changing the parameters on inside a function, this is when we talk about scope. When I pass this parameter 1 minute in seconds, let's say that it becomes the first parameter, right? But I can mutate that parameter and convert it in something different. For example, first parameter is gonna be, for example, in this case, first parameter, but I'm gonna add something else. I already put this, for example, here. So what happens there? As you can see, it increased then because now 1 minute, 1 minute in seconds, it's outside the scope of this function. And first parameter, which was 1 minute in seconds, now it's being mutated inside the scope, meaning inside this area of the function. It's like encapsulated. It's inside everything that you do inside this function is gonna be in its own bubble. Imagine like that. So mutating something inside, it's its code in this case of the function. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'll go more deep in more examples in a bit, but please, if you can, just follow me through, play with these variables, and use the playground so you can understand a little bit better. Because there's a lot to cover. I need to go a little bit fast, but again, just play with it, and I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware of a lot of this stuff. Okay. And finally, we got private versus public. We got ways of working with private versus public in Python, but for example, if you want to work with a private element here in this specific file, for example, in here, we want to like hide something. Hey, I don't want anyone to get to this variable. I don't want anyone to get to this secret string. How do I do that? Access modifiers is a way to control the visibility of something, right? In the case of, for example, Swift, we can set a variable as private, something like this. Like we can set, hey, this is a private variable, and I'm just gonna call it secret, and the secret is whatever I want, right? Unfortunately, we don't have access modifiers here in Python. We got ways to hide it. We're not gonna touch that. I just want to mention it really quick because it's really important to maybe start like reading about access modifiers, especially if you guys want to start building something in production on a more professional level. Just keep that in mind. Take some time to understand when and how it's used properly. But one thing what we can do, trying to, if you find something like with a lowercase, in Python, there's this convention that this specific variable can be a private, although it is not a private. As you can see, let me just save and run my code. I I can get this variable into the console because it's not actually private. But very important to understand access modifiers. Just want to mention it really quick because they can be really useful. I'm gonna start like going through the next part, and again, just showing this app, which is Stars Tree, just to understand how you guys can like switch between commits and start checking your code. Very useful, just in case you guys not aware of that. As you can see, for example, I don't have the rest of the code in here, so I'm gonna like start moving ahead and gonna clean all of this. Again, all of this code you're gonna be able to check on the repo, so don't worry about that. If you guys are a little bit behind, you can go back later and check the commits. So again, I'm gonna just fly through these types just to start understanding what we're gonna build with the stopwatch. Again, we're gonna need a button label, sorry. So we're gonna need a string. We're gonna need what's a Boolean? So a Boolean is very simple. Like for example, has started. For example, if our stopwatch has started, we wanna like set it to true maybe or false. Whatever you guys, depending on the situation. If we start like, hey, I want to start the stopwatch right now, we want to need maybe a flag with a Boolean. So we know that there is like the current situation is that the stopwatch is running. And then we have our integers. We already like touched those. Nothing new here. And then we're gonna float. If you guys don't know a float, just what there is some numbers floating out here. Right? Again, there's more in depth with here. For example, a double can have more precision on the decimals. If any of you guys know and a little bit of C++, for example, there's like a super big, I want to say, area of discussion for how to manage numbers and how important they are and what's the limit between a float and a double and unsigned and a signed number and all of that. But don't worry, for now, it's important to understand just the difference between an integer, which doesn't have any decimals, and then you have float that does have decimals. And again, we don't have like we don't really need like a super precision number here, but maybe we do want to have something like, for example, we in this project we don't need pi, but we wanted like to use something like pi. I'm sorry, I think is what 14, 14, 15. Let me see. Yeah, what was the number of pi? It doesn't matter, but you guys get it, right? You get like precision for this, for example. But if you want more numbers, maybe you need something that is not float. Then we got lists, and in lists is, imagine that it's just like an array. An array, what's an array? It's just like a set of elements. We got a set of elements here. As you can see, we got the first one, the second one, the third one, and it's everything encapsulated over here. So to understand all of these types, we're gonna start playing with them with a small project called Pomodoro. And with Pomodoro, we're gonna start playing with the operators. If you guys don't know operators, we're gonna understand in a bit. So, what are operators? A way to understand operators is very simple. We got a few. Again, we don't gonna go super deep on all of them, but usually we got major than, less than, and then we got like major or equal. All of these you guys know. I just want to like touch base on really quick on them. So we're gonna start establishing a Pomodoro tracking time for 30 minutes. If the Pomodoro tracking time, again 30, is major than 45, it's time for a break. Else, if the Pomodoro tracking time is more than 30 and less than 45, almost time for a break. And if not, you still have time to work, right? And we can print all of this in our terminal. What are we doing here? So we're just trying to understand how we can use, for example, our integer and use the operators to start taking decisions. So for example, what happens when we start our workshop here? I think it was, or was it? I think it was here. I want you guys to start imagining what happens when I start the stopwatch, for example, right? But I stop. How do I know where the time is? Like, do I keep track? How do I keep track? And how do I restart the timer correctly? And just keep that in mind, because it looks really simple, and it's very simple. But once you start building something, you start realizing that, hey, okay, I need to start taking decisions on how to keep the user data and give the user the correct way of showing the information. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So let's run this. Oh, my bad. I think it was, I haven't saved this project yet. Yeah, I haven't saved. Okay, almost time for a break. As you can see, because we stated that it's 30 and it's equal to 30, almost time for a break. And if we decide now that we are like 46 minutes into our task, and I need to save, I have a bad tendency to not save, my bad there. It's a time for a break. There we go. Oh, it was right, my bad. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Again, take notes, play with it, and let's keep moving forward. Right. Now let's move to loops. Really quickly, loops. It's a way to transverse small lists. Remember, we have lists over here, so it's a set of elements. If we want to transverse through it, we use a loop. We have we got for loop and a while loop, and then I think we have do while also. Just want to like go one by one really quickly so we can start actually building the stopwatches on like last part, I promise, where we touch the basics. So okay, I need to save. I forget to save, my bad there. And as you can see, a for loop is just, it just transverses the whole set of elements. goes first with the first one, read, walk a dog, and send email. So this is like a small list of tasks to do. And as you can see, I just transverse all of them. Let's do a while. But let me just uncomment this. As you can see, I'm trying to check if while the length or the size in this case, or length, if you want to read it like that, of the size, there you go, of the task is major than 0. We're gonna start like, hey, the next task is gonna be this one, and then we're gonna remove it. So we're gonna mutate the task until everything is clean. So it's very similar to a for loop, is just another way to transverse. And then the simple thing. What we can do here is just once we finish this, for example, we can check the, like, for example, what happened with the with the with the list. As you can see, when we complete the read, we only have 2 left. We complete the doc, only send email is left. And when we complete send email, there's nothing there. So just something to keep in mind. We can do the same thing here. It's just another way to use a loop. And let's go back to a Pomodoro and see what happens when we want to, like, for example, have a counter. We don't have a counter right now because we're gonna focus on the stopwatch, but you can do the same thing. Just need to adjust the logic. Imagine that you want to set a timer for 60 seconds and you want to count down 60 seconds, right? You can do something similar to that with a loop. You see, oh, this is really quick, of course, but as you can see, it transfers the whole 46. I think, yeah, we changed it to 46. The whole 45. Imagine that every one of this was a second, but in this case, I'm not putting 1 second, it's just going through it. But we can do that with another small loop. So let's see what we get with this one. There we go. Same thing here. We got a wrong running time here, right? We need to be careful with this one. When we're doing any kind of loop, remember that we got an infinite loop that it can happen. For example, I'm just gonna just for the sake of it, well, true. What happens if I do this? It won't stop, right? It just doesn't stop. It's just gonna keep running. This is something that is gonna be detrimental for a project. Just, yeah, as you guys saw, I had some troubles trying to close it. Why do we have an infinite loop? Because we don't have a way to, like, exit the scope of this. Remember, scope from functions. We need to be careful what we're looping through. If we don't have a way to get, like, exit the whole loop, you're gonna encounter some trouble. Something to just keep in mind. In this case, I can't use while true, or kind of like just can't do something like this. But I wanted to use the while true as an example to remember to keep clean your code, to understand what you're doing in a loop, and find ways to exit the loop. Else you're gonna find problems just like me, encounter problems just like me. Okay, almost there, almost there. The last part we got, and I promise we'll start building some UI and some cool stuff. Okay. We're gonna start working with time finally. Now that we understand all of the elements you guys maybe are familiar with, all the types, operator, functions, and all that stuff, we're gonna start working with time finally, okay? Okay, one thing we do in Python, like in other languages, is import libraries that are useful for us. Many other engineers have done a lot of great work out there just to help us out, or just doing some open source project, or even Python by itself had its own library, built-in libraries. We're actually going to do like the usage of time and decanter for this project. So I don't know if that's the right way to pronunciate decanter, but hopefully it is. So in this case, we're gonna use the library import time and the threading from timer. So to start, very simple, we're gonna understand how do we capture the time. And I think it's an epoch time. Don't worry about that for now, but well, let me just go back to where I am. See one sec. Yeah, I think it's on my desktop, right? I was working on my desktop. Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, when we have, oh, my bad. I really like have something here running, my bad. When I handle myself, forgot to comment this one, sorry. Let's see. Okay. As you guys see, we got a representation of the current time. Right now, when we want to capture the time, we got this like weird number. So don't worry if you don't understand this, but right now this is a representation of the current time. This is a way that Python gives us like a epoch time to start working on it, but we need to make it more friendly, right? So for that, we're gonna start working with tuples. But before we working with tuple, we want to understand how we can start tracking time during a project, right? So maybe we can start with two small variables just to start, print something, sleep for 5 seconds, and maybe get what's the end time between these two, right? Okay, let's go over here. I need to say my bad again. Sorry for that mistake of me. So as you can see, it's sleeping right now. And there we go. So you can see the final part here is 90 and then 95. So we got like, okay, we got like a progress between two times. So, okay, we're tracking time now. We know that there is some progress there, okay? How about the lapse time, right? What happens there? I think I forgot this part. Let's lower the sleep to just 3 seconds. There we go. So as you can see, only 3 seconds happen. Again, as you can see, this is like a double with a huge decimal, but we don't really care for now for this one, right? Because our stopwatch is very simple. We don't really keep track of all the milliseconds. We just wanna keep track of the seconds for now, right? But if this is a good, maybe a good challenge for you guys in the future, you want like maybe track the milliseconds, you need to start working with doubles or floats, right? Okay. And let's keep moving forward. Now we can move to tuples, a type that we didn't touch, and types if you want to like maybe understanding right here, what's a tuple. And for this, we're gonna use a very simple function over here. Let me just start uncommenting some of these things. 1 second. Just let me show you guys what I mean. Commenting this, so we don't need this for a moment. I think I commented something incorrect here. Last sign, last thing can remain there, and I think I got something wrong here. As I'm putting the frame before the top. Okay, that was my bad. Sorry about that. I think I do need start time and end time. I thought I organized this better, so sorry for this. Again, I'm pretty sure once you guys get into the repo, you're gonna stand a little bit better. But mistakes happen, and you sometimes need to refactor, right? So okay, there we go. So let's see what do we get. As you can see, what I'm doing here, just trying to use the diff mod function. The div-mod function, you can check the documentation over here, but basically just text to complex numbers and just there we go. There's the description, and try to divide them by the number you pass here, right? So we're gonna like try to get the minutes by the time elapsed, and then we get the remainder. The remainder we can get by divided by 1, and we can get the seconds and the milliseconds. So because we're only tracking a few seconds, we're not gonna get any minutes, but we can start getting some friendly numbers here with seconds and milliseconds using the diff mode. And with all of that, we can maybe concatenate everything into a friendly string. And now we're getting some place that we can actually use to our UI, okay? Okay, so start with 0, 5 seconds, and then it's telling you, right? No minutes, 0 minutes. We get a remainder of 5, and then we get seconds and milliseconds, 5 seconds, 0 milliseconds, and then we get that total elapsed time, 0 minutes, 5 seconds, 0 milliseconds. So we're starting getting some place that we can maybe start building or timer, because now we extracted the good part, which is just the minutes, the seconds, and the milliseconds. Okay, now we get that out of the way, we can go really quick here on a basic timer that allow us to have like an example of our timer or stopwatch. But now we're using the timer. I think I already mentioned this. We're importing the thread in from timer. Let's see what we get from here. As you can see, we are defining a small function, timeout, to call after we finish everything. And then we start a timer for 5 seconds. And then once it passes the 5 seconds, we are gonna call a timeout. And for this, we only start and then join to complete everything. Hopefully that makes sense. It's very simple. If you guys don't need to really understand the whole element of the timer from Python, it's just a way to understand how we can move through time and call a method. Calling a method and using a scope and a method, that's something that you should know though. Okay, let's see what happens here. There we go. So it tells you, hey, you have 5 seconds to finish the task, passes 5 seconds, and then game over. So this is kind of like a small timer that we can do to do whatever we need. Maybe, again, just, hey, you can do something, the user can do X in 10 seconds, 60 seconds. And then after that time passes, we just let them know, hey, your time has completed, right? And finally, again, sorry for going super fast, but I'm sure you guys have some doubts or want to check the final project, how everything was built. The last thing we're gonna do here is just make a small timer, but we're gonna track now the whole timing that we want. So let's see, just let me comment this part out. The way we do this is we create a small method called count each second. We establish that the level in seconds is equal to seconds. If it's less than 1 second, well, we're just gonna say the word second, and then we're gonna keep showing, hey, each second has passed, X second has passed. And as you can see, we get a small loop that will be calling this small method for each second until we interrupt it with the or keyboard. So let's see what happens when we run that. Okay. So I make it smaller because maybe you guys are having troubles seeing my console with. There we go. So we're tracking time right now. And once we interrupt our terminal, okay, so time to stop, 23 seconds. There's a small problem over there, but as you can see, we track time during 33 seconds. So yeah, all of this, now we have a way to track time, and we can finally, now we know how we can manage to extract from something very simple like the usage of time from Python, usage of methods, usage of a for loop, checking with operators, checking with tuples, and all of that. Now we can maybe start moving all of our code into something more visual like this. This is the final part. Okay. I'm just gonna share it really quick so you guys can see it. This over here. I lost it 1 second. Oh, this is our final project. So just to be sure that we are on the same track, we're gonna start importing Tkinter. For any of you guys don't know what's Tkinter, very simple but really powerful. It's a way to work with Python UI elements. We can start building our UI. It's cross-platform. I really enjoy working with it. That was like the second time I worked with it, and it's very simple to start creating stuff with Tkinter. Please take some time to understand it. It's very simple to just start importing and creating like visual elements in. And the good thing about Tkinter is that it's cross-platform. So what you guys do, for example, I'm running on a Mac, but my code can be run on a Windows, and I think even like Linux. But I'm not sure about Linux. I'm pretty sure that it can be run on Linux. I think there's a couple steps extra to make it work, but I'm pretty sure with Windows and Mac you're set. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is a class. Class, I'm pretty sure you guys know, it's a way to encapsulate just a function, but in this case, it's a more complex element. I'm running all the time, so I don't want to like really like go through classes right now, but just remember that you can instantiate your class to have whatever you're gonna need to to build your project, right? But before the class, sorry, I bypassed. We get the main entry of our project, which is the app, and as you can see, Tkinter asks you to start like the baseline, which is just, hey, please, um, sorry about that. Instantiate Tkinter. We create the instance over stopwatch, and we pass Tkinter here, and then just let the Tkinter main loop run, which is like, hey, start the project that I instantiated over here, please. And when we get here under init, we're passing Tkinter and start like setting some labels. As you can see, we're setting a stopwatch, we are setting some sizes, and as you can see, there we go, or constants. And again, you're gonna be able to see all of this code. What we talked about, part one is variables, part two is types, and then we got scope and functions with the part that we just talked about on, I think it was part three. And there we go, our functions, start, stop, and reset. Okay, and then we get update time too. And once we have all of our methods and keep track of all of this, in I'll go in detail in a second for all of this. But once we get all of that done, we are just combining what we just talked about. So don't feel like super like overwhelmed of all of this code. I'm pretty sure if it's the first time that you just faced Tkinter, you're gonna say, "What's all of this?" Don't worry, Tkinter is very simple. but just to go really fast with it, we're gonna set some variables, constant start time is running, and the timer ID, right? We didn't see none, but imagine that's like a null. It doesn't mean anything right now because we don't really need it right now, but we're gonna change it later. And then we start a label, which is gonna be our or elements that will be displayed over here, what we're gonna need. For now, I'm just using Arial of a size 30, and because every time we start our project, we change this label over here. So as you can see, it's over here. Then we create a frame for all of our buttons. As you can see, start, stop. We got some UI elements like width. For example, if you want to like make a button bigger or the padding, for example, you can adjust this. For example, what happens if we expand our window or make it shorter? So it's not responsive as a website, but if the sites allow us to present the complete width of our buttons, we can declare a width, right? But what happens if we change it to 20, for example, here? Let's change really quick. Just so you guys know that you can play with all of this on your own time. As you can see, when I run this, the first one kind of allows me to put it on 20, but the rest not. So you need to start like taking in consideration like UI elements when you are presenting your project, right? But for now, I'm just gonna roll back. And then we got the functions, like start is just when you run the start, what happens here? If it's not running, we set the or flag to true, so we know we're running, and then we start tracking time. Again, we already touched this. We call update time, and update time over here. Again, check if it's running. If it's not running, it just doesn't go through it. And then we start tracking the time and see if it was already like, hey, was there anything before? Like if I stop, for example, right now, there's 28, right? When I when I run start again, it's gonna call update time and it's gonna check, hey, has any elapsed time is there any elapsed time over there to compensate for current time? If it's there, now we can increase the timer. So that's basically what we're doing here, right? Then we already talked about the diff mod just to extract the seconds, minutes, milliseconds, and then we can format or label over here. Now, this is another way to format or string. Um, Again, just to make it a little bit more, I want to say neat, a more clear way to present a label instead of just having the concatenation that we saw earlier. And this is like a small refactor. Refactoring is very is something that you're gonna do in a daily basis. You can start with something simple, and once you face the situation where, hey, maybe I want to make my code a little bit more cleaner, more scalable, you start maybe doing something like this, right? So you're basically just setting like the minute and the amount of numbers that you want to like set on this label and concatenate everything. And that's pretty much the update time and stop. There's not much there. We just change the flag to false and wait for the we set the current time so we can know when the lapse time when update time runs again. We have it, and the reset it just resets everything. So I went the fastest I could because we got like just 1 hour to go through all of the details. I know there's a lot going on there, and I know you guys maybe have some questions. And I'm sorry if I didn't touch like in depth everything, because there's a lot to check on this. But hopefully, at least you guys know um, some of the basic how to start working through your details, how working through your projects, working through all of this progress on a project. And for example, in this case, I didn't do it. This is my mistake because I was doing a lot of stuff. But in this case, for example, we didn't commit through all of the changes that we did. But let's say that we were done for now, just to close this small workshop. Now we're done. We're ready to start like maybe committing to our project because we have finished our project. Oh, my mistake. I didn't like add the file to commit, and we can now commit our project. There's something wrong here. And there we go. Our project is complete. And just gonna leave the small link over or chat just in case you guys wanna see, you wanna like maybe pull it. Just feel free to start playing with the project. You guys can see the whole process that I did from the start until the end, and just check what we just discussed. I recommend you to use, maybe you can use the terminal for this, but it's easier to just, for example, using a program like Source3, just pull and start checking the code on that specific time. But yeah, that's the workshop, guys. Hopefully you guys learned something. I know, again, I went really quick with all of this content really fast, but I just wanted to cover the basics and deliver you guys something that maybe you can start working with and doing something better. Let me know if you guys do something with a stopwatch or something more complex. Um, I'll be eager to know about your projects. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully, again, it makes sense. And thank you for everything.
All right, thanks a lot, Wilson. Real quick, can you also share your LinkedIn in the chat? All right, so everyone, if you want to connect with Wilson some more, you can add him right there. I will also email that out. So, the main thing is, we want to make sure everyone feels like they got a good grasp of this. You can watch the video. We're gonna send out the GitHub link as well. In the end, the point of this workshop was to help you get a sense of how you can convert what you learn in the classroom into an app, or maybe a part of an app. I'm sure many of you already have ideas on how a stopwatch can be used. So since we are coming up on an hour, we're at 59 minutes because we started a few minutes after the scheduled time. We're going to go ahead and shut it down here, and I will send out the video link so you can rewatch it. So everyone, thank you for attending this workshop. We hope you enjoyed this. We will see you around.